I'm Jake Morphonios with the End Times News Report. In this video, I'm going to talk about the destruction of the food supply in America. I think you'll really enjoy this information, so stay tuned. When I was a kid, I spent much of my time on my grandparents' farm in a little town called Chesterfield in South Carolina. I don't think my grandparents even considered their home a farm. It's just where they lived. They had a simple little house that my grandfather himself had built. It sat on maybe 100 acres of land. But I thought of it as a farm because most of what we ate came from our own gardens or from the gardens of other family members, because we would exchange vegetables with each other. We had pecan and walnut trees on the property, wild plums, figs, apple trees. And so as a kid, outside, playing all the time, whenever I got hungry, I'd just go pick up some pecans off the ground and crack them open, or I'd go pull a pear off the pear tree, maybe get some sour grapes. At night, we ate things like sliced cucumbers, squash, okra, tomatoes, sometimes a little meat when we could get it, maybe pork chops or fried chicken. I thought it was wonderful. It was a huge contrast to my regular home, which was down in the metropolis of Miami, Florida. Most people don't eat that way anymore, though. We buy this pre-packaged, nutritionally empty food from grocery stores. We run through fast food drive-thrus. We've become a nation of unhealthy people, fat people. We have epidemics of disease that are directly connected to our diets. But the average person really isn't to blame for all this trouble. It's just that we no longer have access to fresh food on a wide scale. Gone are the days of family farms like the one that my grandparents lived on. Today, less than 2% of Americans are farmers. So what happened? What was it that destroyed our healthy food supply? I did some research, and I want to talk to you about what I've learned over the next couple of videos here. There was a guy from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation who said in a debate that he couldn't understand why the rest of the world wouldn't follow the agricultural policies of America. He said, we have such a hard time convincing other countries to do it the way we do it here in the United States. Well, let me talk about this American model for just a minute. This model has cost America 10 million farmers. 5 million farms are out of business. 75% of all of the creatures that are on the endangered species list are there because of big farming, big ranching by mega corporations around the world. We have a host of diseases. We have epidemics of childhood obesity. Remember, we used to say adult onset diabetes. We don't use that phrase anymore, do we? Why? Because the epidemic of children who now get adult onset diabetes. Our food is directly responsible for that. We know that the scourge of cancers and childhood leukemia comes from the pesticides that big agriculture uses on our food. As I said before, less than 2% of Americans are farmers anymore. Can you believe that? It's shocking to me. I can't fathom this. For years, there wasn't even a space for the occupation of farmer on the U.S. Census Bureau form where you have to check off your occupation. You had to list it under the other category. 10 million farmers? 5 million farms gone? We lose all this biodiversity. We destroy all kinds of animal and plant life. We've created massive disease. The population is sick. What country would follow the U.S. model? That's what I want to know. It's a crazy way to try and grow our food. And the thing is, we're not even really growing food in America. We're growing commodities. We can't even call these things that they're growing food anymore. What are they doing? They're not even feeding people, really. They're feeding cattle. They're growing corn for cattle. They're growing corn for ethanol. That's not food, those are commodities. How did we get this way? How did this happen? The secret is in the history of the seed. What we've done with seeds in America. A lot of people don't know about this. It's not taught in school. Do you know when the USDA was created? 1862. Created during the Civil War for the purpose of getting food to soldiers. But very soon, the major job of the USDA became the job of going around the world to collect seeds and bringing those seeds back to America and giving them out for free to farmers around America. Billions of seeds were redistributed by the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, to American farmers. They were even giving them away at the offices of members of Congress. Why? Because back during, well, think back to when George Washington ran for a seat on the House of Burgesses prior to the establishment of the United States. The way that he got votes was the same way that most other politicians back then got votes. That is, they would give out free beer at the polling places to people. Well, in the 1800s, the congressmen were giving out free seeds to get people to come vote. That's what the USDA used to do, distribute seeds. But in 1924, Congress decided to stop doing that because they were influenced by these major corporations, these big industrialists, who said, we're going to try and make money now off agriculture. They made billions of dollars on steel, oil, railroads. So we've got these Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Vanderbilts, people like that. These people decided they wanted to make big money from food. People, though, were saving their seeds. See, after you harvest your crops, you save seeds from those crops and you replant them and you reuse them. That's a problem, though, to those trying to make money off food. You can't make massive amount of money selling seeds, for example, if people can just reuse their own seeds. So what they did is they said, no more free seeds. Next, we're going to make farmers buy their seeds. And so we need to create seeds, which is what they did during the Great Depression, seeds that only grow for a single season. That way the people have to keep coming back for more seeds. The farmers have to keep buying them. So farmers were desperate. They bought these seeds that were no good after one season. They had to keep going back, buying more seeds over and over again. A lot of farmers couldn't afford this. So the next thing that the capitalists, these mega capitalists, did is they decided, we're going to make corn with stalks so thick that the only way to harvest it is with big machines. So now, first of all, only the farmers who could afford the seeds, to keep rebuying seeds, could stay in business. But then it became only the farmers who could afford the big farm equipment were the only ones that could stay in business. Huge numbers of farmers went out of business all across America. There was a massive change in the way that the land was owned in America. It went from private ownership to corporate ownership, the corporate leasing of land. So what happens when you become monocultural like this with your crops? What happens when you stop this great diversity of crops and just focus on one or two crops, corn, for example? Well, you have a massive pest infestation. The pests arrive. Here come the insects. You've got weeds, now you've got insects, so what do? Well, you need chemicals. You need pesticides to fight the pests. Otherwise, they're going to target these massive mass-produced crops. So we see the corporations now getting into the chemical business. And all of this happened because these big corporations, led by industrialist giants, took over seed production. They snatched it out of the hands of the people. They patented new kinds of seeds that could only be produced one time. It was a sinister plan. It was very effective from their point of view. They grabbed the food market, but it was immoral. Years later, of course, what happens is the soil starts to get depleted because they're not diversifying the crops. They're not rotating crops. So then they go and they take all of these chemicals, all this poison that they had been using during times of war, and they say, hey, the war's over, let's start using these chemicals in the soil so we can gerrymander things and keep growing crops. So the first few times that they started doing this in the early days, using these chemicals, farmers were catching on fire because the chemicals were so volatile that they were blowing up. So we've got the seeds. You have to afford the seeds. You have to afford the machines. And now only those farmers who can afford all these expensive pesticides and chemicals for the crops were able to stay in business. So the little farmer loses their independence. They go out of business, have to find other kinds of work. These people could no longer live independently, function independently with their own family farms, their own family businesses. They essentially became slaves of these corporations. All of that in less than 3 generations. An interesting fact is that in 1890, the government looked at which occupation had the most suicides, the highest suicide rate. And they found that back then it was accountants. They were number 1, followed by bookkeepers and copy editors. These were the top 3 professions in which people were committing suicide. Today, farmers have doubled the suicide rate of any other occupation in America. A report just came out of Colorado that just in the last 3 or 4 years, the rate of suicide among farmers has doubled every single year. Where is all this headed? What are these people after? Why do they have to control the food supply? It makes me think of the cartoon The Jetsons. What do they eat? They've got these little nutrition pills. They try and eat them with a fork and a knife. What do they drink? Not water. In the future, apparently, what they drink is Tang, the scientifically produced orange drink that the astronauts popularized. So this mechanization of production of food was headed that direction, but it didn't happen. That vision was not fulfilled because the American people rose up against it. They said, we are not going to do this. So we had the beginning of the organic movement in 1969. People started talking about the use of pesticides and what it was doing to their bodies and the bodies of their children. They started saying, if we eat this stuff covered in chemicals, it's going to do something bad to us. And so we see the rise of the organic movement. Not just that, people were starting to awaken to the crimes that were being committed against billions of animals. The way that factory farms treat animals in such an inhumane way became an issue for the first time. So people are looking at the humanity, the humaneness of their food. So this organic movement is completely opposed to the industrial model used by these mega corporations, but they haven't given up. From 1905 through 1970, every congressional session they tried to patent seeds. They lost every time, every session, because people knew farmers had the right to save their own seeds, to do what they wanted with their own seeds. And so the corporations lost every single time. People thought that was the end of it. But in 1980, the Supreme Court, in a close 5-4 decision, decided that they were going to allow the patenting of microbes, geoengineering microbes. So they could use it. For this company wanted to use it. General Electric, I think, wanted to use it to eat oil. And they won. It turned out, though, that they couldn't use that. The oil was, the microbes were eating far more than the oil. But later on in 1985, during the Reagan administration, the courts extended that decision to plants, to animals. And what's important to understand is that genetic engineering was just the door that opened that kind of activity. It wasn't just genetically engineered plants being patented. Right now, the vast majority of plants that are patented, they're not genetically engineered, they're hybrids. 1,700 animals are patented. Did you know you can patent an animal? This opened the door to corporate ownership, to the patenting of life itself. So every time life reproduced naturally, it was a violation of somebody's patent, some corporation's patent. So not only are farmers now essentially tenant farmers trying to pay off this massive debt to stay in business, now we've got the seeds, the machines, the chemicals, the fertilizers, but now they have to pay royalties to these big corporations who own the patents on these seeds anytime there's a problem here between natural seeds and these synthetic seeds. On one side, we've got the industrial model that has the patenting of seeds, the engineering of seeds. On the other side, we've got the organic model, the natural food movement, and the two sides are battling each other. So that's the introduction that I want to give you in this video, just to lay the groundwork for what I'm going to discuss in subsequent videos. If this is a topic of interest to you, I hope you'll, first of all, share this video. We need to get the word out about what these corporations are doing to our food supply, what they have done, and where this is going. But also, watch these videos to try and learn, become educated. These things are so important to ourselves, to our posterity, to our society. Right now, we look at third world countries and what's going on. It's just, we must look at the humanity. We must look and see life is not about making a profit. If that's all it is, then we're doomed. If money is the bottom line, if morality, if goodness, decency, treatment of our fellow man with respect for the earth, respect for animals, if these things are not taken into account, if money, the dollar is the goal, we're done. Look at what's already become of us here in America. Look at how fat and sick we are compared to even third world countries. It's a shame. So please subscribe to this channel, share this video, leave comments in the comment section below, and stay tuned because I do have more videos on this coming up very soon. Thanks so much. Have a great day.